Safeguards for digital banking to be introduced after a recent spate of scams targeting bank customers. It will include the removal of clickable links in emails or messages sent to customers. For more on this story, we are joined now by Associate Professor Hannah Lim from the Nanyang Business School. Good evening, Professor Lim. MAS is now putting in these rather stringent measures. How effective do you feel that they're going to be in curtailing scam tactics?
Good evening. Well, I think they will go some way in mitigating scams, but they will obviously not be completely foolproof. For example, the new measures that's been announced tonight, they do not address incident handling at all. And I think many of us have heard stories of customers calling the bank when they first got the SMS saying that something has happened, but they were put on hold for several minutes. And during these several minutes, basically funds amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars were just simply taken out. So I think we will probably be seeing more measures coming in, but these are definitely good stopgap measures for the time being to curtail scam tactics, but they are by no means the end of the story.
Professor Lim, as you say, these are not comprehensive, but even these measures, if banks cannot keep up with these measures, what could it mean legally for them if their customers get scammed?
Well, let's put it this way. Legally, it would be a question of obligations and liability, both under the contract and under what we would call tort law. And ultimately, I think it depends on where they might fall short, where the banks might fall short in terms of keeping up with these measures, because if the measures are dictated by the regulatory authority, the MAS, and if they fall short, then I think customers would probably have a good case against them to ask them to bear the losses. But, I mean, realistically speaking, though, that is only just the beginning, because there will be definitely, even just of the last few months, there is already an erosion of trust in the particular banks involved. And these will have ripple-on effects in terms of tarnishing the reputation and profitability of that bank. And more broadly, though, and I think this is more of concern to all of us, is that there may be issues with trust in internet banking in general. And in a time of pandemic, this is where we do need internet banking in whatever way, shape or form that we can find it. So I think there are much larger, broader issues apart from the specific legal ones. But of course, you know, in terms of all of this, the consumer also has to take on responsibility. And this is why it was good to see that in the new measures announced tonight, that or today, that there is a reinforcement of customers to be more responsible and to take care of what they do.
So we've seen these phishing attacks, but besides those, there are other ways in which customers can become vulnerable as well to scams. How can we ensure that current regulations are going to be able to keep up with the rapid way in which scammers work? They're constantly sort of one step ahead in a sense.
Well, to be honest with you, the ways in which scammers can operate are many, many, many. They're multiple. And it is actually not possible to ensure that regulations are always catching up. And I think it goes back to a much larger question of what do we as consumers value and what banks think consumers value. And I think it needs to relook the presumption that all of its customers prefer convenience over security, because there are many of us who do not. And I can say to you that even the phasing out of the digital tokens, the plastic, I mean, I can understand about sustainability, but until they come up with a better way of dealing with the two-factor authentication, they should not throw out the digital token just yet, because after all, if we're asked to use an app on the phone, and phones are easily hacked. The phones are the most vulnerable digital devices there are. And so I think that there are many, many ways in which attacks can occur and scams can occur. I mean, even I mean, I note that in today's announcement, there was notes about SMSs and emails to customers. But realistically speaking, people can perpetrate those kinds of crimes on social media, like WhatsApp, as an app, and other things, pretending to be a bank or pretending to be something or some other body. So it's not just about regulations.
Professor, as you mentioned, we need to be open to ideas that perhaps banks are not open to. For example, we might in fact prefer inconvenience if that means our accounts are more secure. So are there other measures that banks or regulators can take, learning from the experience of, for example, other countries, and be open to these experiences as well?
To be honest, Singapore, in terms of its regulations, is one of the leaders in this, in terms of internet banking and the measures. And in fact, I think in terms of the two-factor authentication, the Singapore government was the first one to mandate it. And what I'm looking at here is we can't just rely on technology and we can't just rely on laws. And in fact, I'm actually working on a funded research over the next 2 years on looking at all the non-technical measures of ensuring cybersecurity. And specifically, when I actually applied for the funding, it was specifically to work with financial institutions, big and small, as well as startups, and with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So hopefully with that, we can actually come up with some insights, toolkits that can be implemented, either from the regulator's point of view or from the financial institutions' point of view. And of course, there can also be changes to the law that strengthens the protection all round. And also, what is always needed is consumer education, because I think we have become a very trusting society, and perhaps it's now time to just wake up and be a bit more cautious about our life savings.
Professor Lim, thank you for your thoughts on these changes that we're seeing to the safeguards for digital banking. That was Associate Professor Hannah Lim from the Nanyang Business School.